Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 708. We do our Night Terrors wrap-up.
From the sleepy suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, there are assembled the world's two greatest podcast hosts, created from the cosmic legends of the universe. Sean Whalen.
Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast. I'm a big fan of variant colors. My love for Batman is that stuff. Let's talk some comics.
And Jim Segulin.
How's it going, eh? You know me and Superman. I'm really loving what they're doing. Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast.
Their mission, to discuss DC Comics in books, movies, and television several times a month in 1 to 3 hour episodes. And to serve all mankind.
Outstanding!
Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the spooky sensei of the whatnot Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to be wrapping up Night Terrors. We're going to really focus heavily on issues 3, 4, and Night's End. We intended to do this over 2 weeks, but because we're at that wrap-up and DC's continuing to move on, we wanted to do a nice little wrap-up show to kind of encapsulate this event. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Remember, DCBS is not just a great location for some comic books. They have various apparel. They've got the collectibles, statues, the busts, toys, action figures, games, and whatnot. So please check out DCBS for some great deals. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they always have their deals of the week, and I love checking these out to see what books I might have missed. And there's actually two here that I usually would pre-order, and I missed. I'm grabbing both of them. Absolute Superman for All Seasons hardcover. This is $100 regularly. It's 50% off, only $50. This book is gorgeous, and I don't have it in an Absolute edition. The artwork alone and the great storytelling makes this one worth a grab. So fitting with the books that we're talking about right now. The Phantom Stranger Omnibus. $150 regularly, 50% off, only $75. I am so stoked for this, especially after the content that we're currently reading. I'm a big fan of omnibuses. This one is right up my alley. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Ooh, Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of Night Terrors. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
This is so fitting because I woke up this morning and I'm clearly in my nightmare world. So, without further ado, let's talk some comics.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Jim, we're going to focus this episode wrapping up the main issues of Night Terrors and talking very casually about the tie-ins, just because we had planned to do this over 2 weeks, but then tornadoes hit here. It's kind of, at this point, with the event wrapping up, we have some really cool stuff coming up at DC that I want to make sure we can focus on, too. This is a big event, an important event, so I want to focus on this one because it really isn't just how this event wraps up and the quality of the event. It's setting the stage for the future. I really like when events do this, so let's jump into it. This is we're going to start first with Night Terrors 3, but I'll kind of do a general about the creative team because this is some of the creative behind it. So issue number 3 was written by Joshua Williamson, art by Giuseppe Camicoli, Stefano Nesi, and Caspar Wingard. Colors by Frank Martin and Caspar. Oh, it's Wijngaard. I know I'm butchering the last name, so I want to get that correctly, and apologies. Letters by Troy Pateri, cover by Ivan Rice and Danny Mickey, with Brad Anderson. Variant covers by Francesco Mattina, Camicoli, Nesi, Martin, and Gary Chu. Christian Duce, Rex Locus, edited by Ben Abernathy. And apologies for name butchery because it was littered throughout there. Just trying to note the quality creative team on this because big things happening in this series. And it's funny, I read this through twice, the ending of it, and, issues 3, 4, and 5. I had a very different impression. It's going to seem silly. My first read-through was kind of like, boy, I really enjoyed that, but it felt rushed. Then I read it through a second time, and I was like, and when I say rushed, not a harsh criticism or anything like that. I just felt like, I don't know if I felt like I wanted another issue or what I wanted. Then I read it through again, and I'm like, there's something wrong with me. This was great. And I never disliked it. I want to be clear. When I say rushed, you like sit there and say, like, there's 90,000 great things I can say, but it just felt like, wow, this is speeding to the end. And I read it through again, and I'm like, no, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I'd do differently. I really liked it. All the way through, this has just been a terrific, well-paced, really enjoyable event that sets the stage for something more to come. Where are you at on this one? And let's start talking about some of the events after that.
It's funny you said the rush thing, because I had that same kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
When I was going through this, and for me, I kind of figured it out with my head, because there were so many other side stories going on as well with the actual main title here with 3, because 3 wasn't technically the end of the series, but it did have that finale kind of feeling to it. And then you have the other issues coming up. So it was a really cool, I was like, what, already? Wait, and then it kind of dawned on me, oh yeah, we've got 4 and then we've got the end.
Mm-hmm.
The final issue, like, okay, so we got so we got a bookend, so we still got a couple more issues to go. This is just really the midway point. But you also have all these other side stories. Some of them are ending, some of them are just, the second issue hasn't come out yet. So it was the pacing was actually brilliant. So I'm not going to I don't want this to sound like I'm knocking it, but it was a bit of adjustment for me.
Yeah.
And I did have to look at that. And then especially because, as I said, issue 3 had an ending to it, but it wasn't a definitive ending. So we still had those other issues, and as these other parts were ending, some of them were a clean ending, others were laying the groundwork for future stories to come out. So it was a bit of an adjustment to me. And again, this is one of the things about this whole Night Terrors event, that I was thinking it was column A, started reading it thinking it's column B, it ends up being column C. And I love that. That's one of the things I loved about this, how I was, when it first came out in my head, I had blank in my mind. That 100%'s out the door, out the window, no comparison whatsoever. Then as I'm going through, they're going to go this route. No, they didn't go that route. They went this one. And that, for me, I love the swerve, love the usage of this. And again, all the side stories were wonderful reads. I had a ball with all of them. Even characters when I'm like, who is this person? I still, by the end of issue 2, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I want to read more on this person now, please. Someone give me a follow-up on this guy, this person, please. So I think that, for me, is one of the best parts about this whole Night Terror story. On top of, again, entertaining is, oh, heck, man, I love this story.
That's where I think, when I said I had some pacing questions, it was never that I didn't like the story. I really loved the story all along. I think what happened was, I'd read issue 3 and then I'd go and read the tie-ins. Then I'd read issue 4 and read tie-ins. That's not knocking the tie-ins. I think what happened, though, the main story, especially when you get 3, 4, and the final chapter, they read much better together, like sequentially. Because the tie-ins aren't really ones where I need to go read this tie-in to understand issue 4. It's more of the tie-ins are telling, the expanded tale of what it's like in the heads of our heroes and how they ultimately wake up. In the cases where that's where the story progresses. Or if they were ever asleep at all, because in some cases they weren't. So it was interesting to kind of just read 3, 4, and the ending sequentially, and that's where I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about with pacing, because this just it reads much better like that.
Yeah,
and that's where my head's at right now. I gotta say, I know we're getting a mini series with the Golden Age Sandman. It cannot come soon enough.
Yes,
I was so Wesley Dodds happy. I've always been a big fan of the character. Going back to JLA, JSA crossovers, he was another one of those because he looks different, right? So you're immediately intrigued and interested when you're doing this crossover, and you've got different versions of the heroes but then you've got these other standouts. It was like him and Dr. Fate and the Golden Age Flash and the Golden Age, Green Lantern. These are people that are standing out because they look different. They're not the same person, even though there's connections to our world. They were different people, and I really liked that. I didn't know at that time that these were the Golden Age characters. Like, they actually they were in the comics. I'm going back, in the late 70s, early 80s, when I was first getting exposed to them. I was young. I didn't really realize the historical significance of these characters. And then realizing, like, oh my gosh, these were the original heroes. Like, they were in comics. They have, like, an intense history. And they have, DC at various times has resurrected those comic books. I really, really would love to see this Golden Age Sandman get an opportunity to either be a part of the JSA again, if that's where this is going, or for them to do another. My dream world would be another Sandman mystery theater. That book was so good. Good. Anyway, listen to this. If you've got the app, the DC app, check it out there. I'm assuming that Sandman Mystery Theater's there. It's worth seeking out the collected editions because it's very, very, very well written. But it's also a character, All-Star Comics, things like that. You're going to see there's a lot of opportunities to read the Golden Age Sandman. And he was just an intriguing character in this. Boston Brand. Wow. Talk about a headliner in this story as we're going through. Because, I'm used to when I'm seeing a comic featuring Batman, following Batman. I really got into Dead Man. I was going to say Dead Batman, but that just sounds weird. But I got into the Boston Brand controlled Batman. I really, really enjoyed this whole awesome. His team up with Damian was great. It was the right kind of mishmash of characters. Like, it felt like some crazy, like, Lord of the Rings, Hogwarts kind of team up, because now all you got these misfits that are, like, teamed up together on this quest, but they're all brave. Like, everyone's trying to do their thing. And I really liked, like, that this felt like an odd couple, but yet I would read another miniseries with these three teamed up in an instant. Like, I love these three as a team. And if you told me at the beginning, this is going to star, well, kind of Batman, but it's really Boston Brand as Batman. And we're going to throw in Wesley Dodds and Damian, I would have been like, really? And I love it.
Zombie Wesley Dodds.
Yes.
Zombie Wesley Dodds,
who's super
Batman
cool,
who's controlled by Boston Brand and Damian.
Mm-hmm. And these are the heroes we need.
Yes, I love this. And again, Damian's usage in this issue is this absolutely brilliant. Right from jump, he's in there hacking and slashing, doing his Damian thing. And then I love the fact that he immediately recognizes that somebody is in possession of his father. That's not his dad. And then the fact that he can see Boston Brand. That for me was like so cool when he pops out and he's like, "You can see me? I have way too much experience with death." I'm like, oh, Damian.
That's one of the things that I really enjoyed was seeing those pieces. One thing that really struck me in this issue in particular, because this is the quest to get the Nightmare Stone. And I think it's, to your point, like, wow, they've got the Nightmare Stone now. I didn't see that coming in this issue. We got to see those cool dream sequences, and I thought there were some really strong artistic choices in how we get to once again journey into Insomnia's head and get to know a little bit more about him, what's driving him, his hatred for the Justice League, how far that went. As far as this is a guy who will not let himself sleep. They're trying to force him to, but he does not want to sleep. He wants to stay awake. He wants to be in the waking world, and he's obsessed with taking down the heroes. And we're starting to learn why. But just how twisted and how far he's gone. I mean, he's a character I can say, I'm usually a believer in second chances, redemption stories, and things like that. There isn't one here. Like, what is his pathway to redemption after all he's done? I don't know how you find one.
Yeah, and he is a lost soul.
Yeah.
And you never want to say that. You always say everybody's got a chance for redemption. No, there's some people who don't. Right there. This guy is over the deep end. And again, and it's funny, even though we're both saying he's a lost soul, we're both saying this is 100% pure bad guy, no way you can save him, you still in the back of your mind want them to. You still hope that maybe he can find his peace, because you understand what caused him, the death of his family, just the horrific events that occurred, and the fact that all of these other victims, that he's in this support group with are like, oh, you got to learn to forgive the Justice League. You got to move on and forget. And he's like, no, never, and you kind of get I understand the obsession and what drew him to where he's at. I don't sympathize for the guy because, again, it's, he is evil. This is evil personified right here, but you understand his motivations. It's one of those things that I love about Lex Luthor as a villain. I 100% have to always call Lex a villain, but you understand his motivation. You understand where he's coming from. You see that tragic flaw in Lex Luthor that if he didn't have it, maybe he and Superman would actually be best friends and the world would be this sunshiny, happy place. Whereas, like with Insomnia, if he did learn to forgive and move on, his life wouldn't have been as horrific. So it's one of those things. On one hand, I'm like, you feel bad for the guy because he can't let it go. But then you understand, okay, because he can't let it go, this is a lost cause, But then again, you think back to the heroes, they're never going to treat him like a lost cause. They're always going to want to try to help him. And that, I think, is one of the things that make the heroes the heroes. Like the big blue Boy Scout would never call this guy a lost cause. He'd say, there's got to be a way we can help him. There's got to be a way we can bring him back. Because that's Superman. That's what he does. And even Batman, for his particularities, he would see there's a possibility of saving this guy. Even though we're reading it saying there's no chance, Bruce and Clark both would look at this and say, this is a guy we have to save.
That's the whole point of Arkham Asylum, right?
Right.
And yes, it's fallen apart in its own way over the years, where there's been, issues after issues with Arkham Asylum. But, that's the whole point of the place, right? Is that it's supposed to be a place for rehabilitation and potential redemption. It's kind of it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that's great about DC characters in general is this idea of the fact that you feel like, yes, it gets really, really dark and things like that, but they're the ones that open the doorway to the dawn. And I'm not saying that as a play on Dawn of DC, but it's fitting that Dawn of DC is kind of this title overarching, because I do think that's something that's unique about the characters. It's, the fact that you really don't expect DC characters to kill. You expect those characters really to be much more focused on following the system and rehabilitating and looking for hope for the future. Second chances. DC Universe is filled with great second chance stories that are great. I mean, look at Wally West, right? Right now, he's the Flash and hoorah, is the great hero, but he was part of a very dark story.
Yes.
And I really like the fact that those stories have those pieces, because we all need that, that hope. It's something that's really neat. I loved the Dead Man costume, the Batman one.
Yeah.
Where when they ship, I thought that was a very, I gotta admit, I want a statue of that. I do. Because I've got, these Batman black and white statues. But I gotta say, I'm saying black and white, I want the red statue. This is the one where I don't care if it's the odd one in the badge. I don't know if we'll get that. Because I'm not seeing the statues come out with as great a frequency as they used to, the black and white ones that we used to get. But that would be on my wish list of swag. It's funny, I've got, in my new office, I have a table that's kind of set up that's, where I put my papers and things like that. It's more of my team, if they come in and they give me invoices and things, or hey, they need a day off or something, they put it in that bin. But it's a long enough table that I've started putting some of my own superhero statues and things like that up there, just to kind of add my office a little bit of personality. You know what it's given me, Jim? It's another Surface. It's a problem. It's because I didn't need one, but
No.
But then I look at this and I'm kind of that would look great there. The sword is a really cool piece of this. The sword that Wesley Dodds is, because what I really love about it is it comes into play later with Zatanna. It is a cool sword. I like seeing Wesley Dodds because he's always been more of this street level character. Because he really is, he's a man, he's a detective. And it's one of the areas where you could see his instant connection with Batman in various stories because of the fact that he really is that guy that is an investigator into all kinds of mysteries, including the weird, the strange, and whatever. But his whole power set really comes from in a very similar way, this kind of experimentation with using chemicals and things like that to knock out his opponents. Because again, this isn't about killing anybody or taking it, it's about subduing them. It's about getting to the root of the mystery, solving the mystery, and hopefully leading onto a path of justice. And I really like seeing that even though we've got zombie Wesley Dodds, we're not going super crazy with the zombie aspect of him. We know he's a zombie and all that, but he's still Wesley Dodds. And he's behaving and acting like Wesley Dodds. I really appreciated that choice because it added, I think, just a whole coolness aspect to, I don't know, I want a series of team-ups with people in zombie Wesley Dodds. Like Dead Sandman team-ups or something.
Yes.
I would read that book.
Walking Dead Man Sandman.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, but he's terrific.
No, hold on, I agree with you. And again, it was funny, a lot of the stuff you're commenting on, I'm just nodding my head, along with you. And one of the things I really dig was artistic choices of when to focus solely on Deadman and Damian and when to give us the split screen.
Yes.
So we see Wesley fighting the Nightmare. And again, that opening sequence when he's got the sword, he's like on guard, and he's just fighting. Then later on, you get another panel where they're showing him going back and forth, and they didn't take too much. They didn't take away screen time, but they put it in when it needed to be put in.
Yeah.
Their primary focus was Damian and Deadman throughout this, but you periodically had to remember, hey, we've got stuff going on in the real world that we need to keep bringing you into play. So again, that was a really cool usage of it, especially when that final end sequence, when they're bursting out with the Nightmare Stone, if they didn't play us back and forth, that massive explosion of them coming out it still would have looked cool, but it had that little bit more element to it, that it was the crescendo of the story. Instead of a good pop moment, it was the climax of the story versus a whoa kind of thing.
Yeah. I loved it in the dream sequence when they had the sand statues, coming up of Damien and because it just added this whole thing, Damien and Deadman, in the ground that were carrying them. I just thought that was just a way cool effect. The sacrifice of Deadman kind of coming to the truth of, I keep telling people, that I was dead before I hit the ground, but it's not true. I felt the bullets. I felt the impact, and he's going through and there's this sacrifice that he's giving in that moment to get the Nightmare Stone. This was his plan. It's okay, I now have the Nightmare Stone. You see how it's partially corrupting Deadman, and he references it later, but I really liked that choice at the end of leaving us with the cliffhanger, then my dreams will come true. When you see that in his eyes, that something is going on there. I just love the brilliance of the strategy of getting the Nightmare Stone. I liked the cliffhanger at that point, making us wonder, what does that mean? There was just something super cool about it.
Oh, big time. And I love the ending, the final page, when you see the Nightmare Stone in Batman's eye. Because I don't know about you, I was wondering, is that Insomnia? Is that the villain? Wait, did the bad guys just win here?
But I like that it actually was the Nightmare Stone, though. I was wondering the same thing, too. So, I'm totally with you. So, I'm nodding along, going, yeah, I'm with you. It was kind of what does this mean? And going all kinds of different directions, including that. So, as we went into issue 4, I was waiting with bated breath to read this issue because and I love that, again, we get the fireside chat with Boston, which is my favorite thing ever. He needs to be the host of a comic in this capacity. I want that. I loved that with the old horror comics, and I would so read that book. Because his personality's perfect. It needs to be this personality, do this with him. But I just, am I nuts? I've mentioned this on multiple episodes. I want this book. It's not even now, it's becoming a need. I want this fireside chat hosted book where other stories are going on inside the book. He's that crypt keep. Like,
Yeah.
I want the Tales from the Crypt kind of thing with him being the host. This goes back to classic DC Comics. I want this stuff.
First, let's answer a couple of questions that you asked her. Yes, you are insane, but in a good way.
Yeah, but I gave you that one. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was just a softball. Bang!
Yeah. And I'm not arguing. Wait, here's the thing. I'm not arguing either.
No, but again, I'm agreeing with you. I like this storytelling. I liked, how they did that with Boston. Again, the breaking down the fourth wall. If you do it right, it's done well. This right here is the fourth wall breakdown, but also I loved how this fireside chat later on is used when he admits, I messed up.
Yeah.
I got played.
Yep.
Insomnia beat me. And I loved how they use it where he throws the comic into the fireplace and say, here's where I messed up. I let my arrogance get to me. And I thought that for me really tied back because like you, I was enjoying these. And then later on when they tie it back to that, I'm like, oh, that is brilliant. That is absolutely wonderful. I love that. So that, again, kudos on everything, agreeing what you're saying, but also kudos for taking it the next level.
So you want to have your mind blown right now? Here's another question I'm asking. Think about the tense in the fireside chat. So he's saying, this is when. So he's telling that story after this.
Oh, yeah. I never realized that. The fireside chat is post-event.
Right. It has to be, right?
Yeah. This is the first I've thought of that.
Super cool.
So, yeah. That is outstanding.
Yeah. So this could be his new gig.
we could seriously get a gig like this.
Yes.
With him doing the play-by-play and commentary on a series.
I would love that.
Their version of The Watcher.
And he's the perfect choice. I would absolutely love that. Arkham Tower and what's going on there is they're going to invade it. I like that this is, it's one of those things where they're like the elevator or the stairs and talking about, here's the thing. In a horror movie, I am not getting in the elevator. So I absolutely agree with the logic behind the stairs. Here's the thing. In the case of a nightmare like this, nightmare world like this, real world or otherwise, you're never going to be fully in control. But I'm going to take as much control as I possibly can. I am not going to be in a box that is on a wire or cable, that all of a sudden the creepy crawlies can start throwing me up and down, which is what happens in every horror movie. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going stairs.
Yep. Yeah, I'll take the leg burn. I'll take the burn. Yeah.
I loved when Damien fell asleep on the stairs.
Yes.
Because I did not know what was going on there. And I got to admit, they swerved me until, the turn of the page. Now, I got, as the dialogue in the last two panels, I'm like, uh-oh, Houston, we got a problem here. And I loved when you flip the page and Damien's like, you're not my father, in the dream. Wesley waking him up and all of that was just so perfect. It was really, it's hard to put horror movie and give you that same feel in a comic, which I know is a strange thing to say with comics history in, telling such great horror stories. I think I admire so much being able to put that thrill of turning the page. Like, it was there. I wanted that. I was drawn to it, and it was really well paced.
Now, here's the thing. I actually was suspicious of that when he's doing that, but I was not expecting him to gut him like he did.
Well, I said the last two panels on that page before, when I was like, Houston, there was going to be a problem. So, I mean, when we turned the page, I knew something was up. Something was going to happen. I didn't think it was going where it did either.
Yeah. I absolutely loved that. I love that reaction. Love the fact that, Damien guts him like that. Mm-hmm. And then, you see later the wake up, and it was, again, really cool usage of that. Because you think about it, how many times have you been at that point where you're just so exhausted? Yeah, and you're just, that walk. You feel like The Walking Dead sometimes. That's what Damien's going through. It's just all the discipline that he's doing to keep his mind, to keep himself awake, to control his dreams, to do all the stuff that the little monster's doing to stay awake. I love that he did have that moment where he did slip a little, and that was a cool, again, really cool usage of this.
seeing Dove and having Boston kind of getting these nightmares that are trying to entice him. Like, give in. Like, come on. Be a part of all this. Let me give you what you want. Insomnia is trying to fight the battle. Poor Boston doesn't realize that he's like a fish on a hook. He's been brought in. This was all done for the purpose of Insomnia having Boston bring to him what he couldn't find on his own. And it was a brilliant strategy by Insomnia. For as wacky as he is, he's smart. Very smart. We do finally see what happened with his family, which is what I assumed was going to happen. And that's sometimes where it's okay to broadcast the story. Because there's sometimes understanding the motivation throughout the story is something that's pretty critical. Williamson didn't need to be in our face with this. It did need to be revealed. Like, I needed that point in time where we got there, but I actually preferred that it was an issue 4. Like, this was the right time to do it. He's been teasing it all along. We as the readers filled in the blanks on our own. This was the point in time for us to see. Am I right? Was this the point? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I love the fact that, we knew his family died. We knew he blamed the Justice League for it. But I love the fact that, in reality, you look at the death sequence, look at the explosion. There's not really a Justice Leaguer directly involved. So, again, you go to the point where he blames the Justice League.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not like, Superman was thrown into his building or, Batman's plane crashed into it or whatnot. It literally is just one of those catastrophic events that happens when you live in cities like Metropolis and Gotham. And, no, he lives in Gotham.
You know why he has to blame the Justice League, though, don't you?
Yeah.
Why?
Because, well, one of it's part of it's survivor's guilt. That's a big survivor's guilt is a huge thing. But 2, he was big time proponent of the heroes and of the Justice League. And he reached out for help us, and nobody came.
But he also, as the father, he ignored the evacuation order.
Oh yeah,
it's his. I mean, here, at the end of the day, dude, stop blaming the Justice League. They told you to evacuate. You did not.
Yep.
Because the heroes were going to save the day. It doesn't matter. They still told you to evacuate. You didn't evacuate. That's not the Justice League's fault. You did not evacuate. He will not take credit for it. I love that aspect of the story. It's a small part of that panel, but it was the 4th panel down when, he's finally, Boston's like, this is the past, your past, Gotham. And he's like sitting there, some kind of disaster. The Justice League is fighting a monster down the street. They said we need to evacuate, but I know the League will save the day. No. They tell you to evacuate and there's a giant monster down the street. You evacuate.
Yep.
You put your family at risk, and doggone it, look what happened. And you're blaming the Justice League for it because of the fact that you didn't listen. That's the part where I'm on this one. I'm crying foul on Insomnia. Here's the piece that I loved about this being in issue 4. I would not have read this in issue 1. Because I was sitting there going through his motivations and, totally being sympathetic to the fact that this was an accident and all that. Like, no, dude, you made a dumb choice. And it impacted your family because you did not listen to what you were being told to do. And that was the stupid move off of that end. They tell you to evacuate, you evacuate. Now, here's the thing. You're human. You make mistakes and all that. But the person who needs to forgive isn't the Justice League. At some point in time, he needs to forgive himself. And I loved that twist. Because I will admit I did not see that coming. I was very focused on the fact, it's probably some Family Guy where his family got, something happened due to collateral damage to his family. And he blames the Justice League. At the end of the day, it's not the Justice League's fault at all. It's his. He should have evacuated. And the monsters. But yes. I loved that twist. It was such a cool part of this story. So, his whole thing is now, Justice League, where are you? Please come help us and all that. He's begging for them now because he banked on them. And there's a point in time where it's weird to say we give these heroes we put them on this pedestal of having these godlike powers. I really like the fact that at the end of the day, the heroes are still human too. It doesn't matter, aliens, whatever. They're not perfect. And they're doing the best they can to try and solve that problem. If the authorities around you are telling you to evacuate, the onus is on you to listen to that. Insomnia.
Get out of Dodge, dude.
That's right.
And I loved, again, going from the human version of him, then back to the insomnia shift, and back to the dead man fight. And again, this was something that really, I was like, it kind of pulled you into more into the story. You're going back and forth. And I will completely admit it, I didn't see the final swerve coming. The whole part where, how he actually wins, where you die in your dream, you die in real life.
Yeah.
There's the sacrifice for the Nightmare Stone. I was like, oh my God, that was brilliant. That was honest, absolutely brilliant. Did not see that coming. I figured he'd get his hands on the Nightmare Stone somehow and use it somehow, some way. I never thought he would be sacrificing his own physical form to launch the Nightmare Stone. That was absolutely brilliant. And again, that goes tying back to, Dead Man when he's doing his fireside chat where he's like, insomnia played me. The only thing keeping him in the nightmare was his real body. I assume that was the key to stopping his powers, but horror stories rarely have happy endings. And I love just how that usage of it and completely sacrificed stuff launches it. This right here was just an epic, brilliant ending. I love this. I loved how they played this one. Because again, I didn't see that part coming. I knew things were going to end poorly, but I didn't see that part. I love when you got an idea where it's going to go, and surprise, we're going this route. I'm like, oh, that is awesome.
The thing I really enjoyed about this is the heroes wake up to a world where he's won.
Yeah.
Talk about you wake up to a living nightmare. That's a crazy thing. And you got to get caught up to speed quickly on that. I really, really liked that choice. It was something I didn't expect.
I loved the ending where Batman flashes back and is a direct tie-in to the ending of his miniseries. To the point where they even have the same panels. Where, Damian's sitting there, Batman's like, I'm still in the nightmare. He's like, no, Father, this is the real world, and we lost. I loved how they actually played that out. That for me was a really cool, just, again, nice little tie-in to the Bat Titles limited series. Or miniseries or whatever.
I want to add a couple of names into the discussion about the Night's End issue. Howard Porter on art and Rain Barreto. I'm hoping I'm not missing anybody there. But just because of the fact that now, because of the size of the issue, and I'm assuming timing, we had to bring some other people in to get this done. I'm always marvel when this is done well. And this is an example, this Night Terrors Night's End issue, where it's done well. We've added Howard Porter in. It's seamless. Like, I did not feel a jarring, that's really something when our teams are trying to collaborate to put this kind of thing together. I really love behind the scenes when they're able to put this together organically. I've also we haven't talked a lot about this one, colors in this. The use of purples and things like that when we're getting into, night sequences, especially when you're opening with the girl, right? Because now we know the rules at the end of issue number 4. Now we're coming in here and she's waking up screaming to Nightmares of the Heroes. And it's gotta, this is our world, right? Going through all of this. And we're starting to see what he's really doing. And he's succeeding. He's giving people children. Which really, when you think about it, at the ground floor, who is the biggest advocate for superheroes but kids, right? You're starting with this kid now who's like, Mom, Dad, let's get this stuff off, which comes later, get this stuff off the wall. But you get why. She's being terrorized in her dreams by heroes, bad images of heroes, where the parents are still, established enough that, we've been living in this world. No, you don't understand. Superman, Batman, they're here to help us. They save us all the time. Even they are being slowly broken down, but you start with a child like that. This is the foundation of the love for heroes. It's a brilliant strategy by Insomnia. Creepy.
Oh, big time.
Creepy as hell, because it just shows right now he has absolutely no... It's what makes him a truly evil villain at this point, because he's lost total connection with morality, right and wrong. He'll terrorize everybody. He's willing to destroy families. He's willing to do anything to basically exact his revenge and never truly face his own guilt. Because his own guilt is really at the core of this piece. Everybody else is wrong. Nobody else deserves what he had because he had this great thing that was taken from him by the heroes. And he's not taking ownership of the fact that, Guy, if you had just listened, we might be having a very different conversation right now. You're the one that's at fault here. Whether you like it or not, you got to take ownership of that piece. I love that aspect of this story because it just, the cruelty that he's exacting here to terrorize a child in her dreams. That's cruel. And like, with the beginning of this issue, I'm like, oh, they got to take this guy down. Take him down hard. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I was obviously I'm a Team Heroes anyway, but that type of thing, that opening of this, the sequence, I thought us connecting with I don't know who this kid is from Adam. I sure cared in the beginning of the issue. That's something that's really important to give this sense of this family, this three-dimensional family here, who really at the end of the day are just meant to be this kind of foundational, setting the stage for what's happening inside this nightmare world. Boy, I cared about them in a few short pages in a way that it says a lot about the writing and the art and being told. But the color tone in this was huge.
Yeah, again, going on, just quick comment on artwork throughout this. This is, as I said, has been one of the stellar stuff on this, on the side pieces, on all just, whether it's the main story or the side stories, the way they captured the horror feel to it without it making it, and I don't want to say without it making it be a horror comic or a gore comic. They didn't need to go gory on this. They didn't need to go that kind of stuff. But again, it's a lot of the tones, the coloring, some of the art choices on the breakdowns of the heroes, and then the nightmare versions of the heroes. You see these terrific things, but it's still they added an element. It was kind of like I'm having a hard time describing what I'm thinking here because it's the artistic stylings that they went with this. For me, kept a classic comic book feel to it, but still added the horror to it. Still added the nightmarish side of it. When we're dealing in the nightmare realm or when the nightmare realm came to reality, they kept that nightmare feel to it. And I think that is something that I absolutely really enjoyed with this, but it never once lost the comic book feel for me. Because what I've started doing more, I've started reading more horror books now. This Night Terrors actually did open up a world of horror comics to me. And to me, the horror comics a lot of the horror comics I've been reading so far have had the same kind of vibe to it, where it didn't feel like a superhero comic book movie, a comic book story anymore. It felt like it was a horror story. This one kept the superhero vibe to it, but also added the horror the horror styling to it. So I really enjoyed it. This issue, but even all of them before this and the tie-ins, they did a brilliant job with doing that. So I was, I just, again, one of the things I loved about this story wasn't just the story being told. Because as I said, there was multiple swerves, and even in this one, there was a brilliant swerve in it that I didn't see coming. But the look of the book as well as the story really sold this on me. When I did my art read-through was an absolute sheer joy on all of these things, just because of this art style.
I think one of the things that they haven't figured out yet in film and television, and there's a lot of different layers to what I'm saying right now, so it's not like a blanket singleton statement, but you're nailing something that I think really, it's when we talk about superheroitis in the theaters, we're kind of getting, fans have seen too much of it and that type of thing. I think the thing is we're putting that out there like superhero films are one thing. And sometimes it's creative, who was behind the scenes making the films. Sometimes it's the audience that just doesn't understand it yet. Superhero stories are not just one thing. They aren't just, one sort of concept. And I think you're the best in streaming. When you watch a thing like WandaVision, for example, I'll throw that out there. That was different. It was really unique in its presentation and what it was doing. And I think there's been a lot of really cool, like, here's what you want. You want some really good traditional superhero movies out there. You want them. You got to have them. I mean, that's kind of a thing. But then you also want to pull out the things that really explore the genre. Why was a movie like Joker popular? Because it explores this all in a very, very unique and different way. And that's why do Guardians of the Galaxy do that? It's another twist on it. It adds there's a humor aspect to it, and it's just a wacky weirdness it's a little bit different. Doesn't take away in any way, shape, or form. Like, that trilogy, I think, is just brilliant in what it does. But you can't compare that to Batman Begins. I mean, they're different, very different in what they're doing. Or like a Christopher Reeve Superman. I mean, they're just, you look at those movies together, there's very different flavors. And you throw in WandaVision and things like that. That's when it's the best of the best, is when they embrace exactly what you're saying here. This story, I think I was not thinking of this until, so I'm looking at that page with the family surrounded by, the heroes and kind of that nightmare presentation there. You're right. It's such a superhero story, but it's encapsulated in this horror weirdness that just totally works for the story that's being told. The tone of this issue, that's where this issue really succeeded for me, because it is now our heroes fighting in a nightmare world. Its presentation, actually, is very different than the previous issues, in the sense that shading around the heroes, even like there's this morphing of shape use, like how the characters are drawn and things, to really show that they're navigating this world of different rules than our grounded world, where we feel safe, right? This world does not feel safe. This is Earth. This is our Earth, but it feels the opposite of safe. And I thought that's something, when you talk about creating an atmosphere, this isn't the dreams anymore. This is
the real world.
It's a nightmare on Earth. It's in a very true sense. I really loved, I think this issue is a pure success in the artistic choices they made and the storytelling choices, the dialogue that goes along with it. But my gosh, as you're reading it, it does look and present itself with the right amount of visual differences from what came before. It still feels part of the same series, but it's showing you that, hey, wait, everyone's awake now, but they want to go back to sleep.
Here's something I noticed, and I just noticed it just right now. We go to where, again, the heroes are going to rise up. They're fighting, Insomnia. Boston's, kind of leading the charge to try to fight them, and Insomnia plays his last ace in the hole to try to distract Boston, and gives him the dead family, gives him that family and all that stuff, and all the kids hanging out with the kids and all this lovey-dovey. If you look at the sequence where they're sitting around playing a game and being a family, that's his fireside chat room. So once again, we're going back to that same fireside chat that we had at the beginning, which...
wow.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, God, that is awesome. I'm like, holy crud. And again... Oh,
I did not catch that, so I'm glad you brought that up. Admittedly, I did not see that at all. Very cool catch.
Dude, again, and that's kind of some of the artwork. And again, just so everyone knows, I literally just caught that just now.
Wow.
And it's funny because... I do my standard read is 3 reads, and I do a first read through, then I go back, I do an art read through, then I do another read through where I'm just, and my art read through is just simply looking at panels, just looking at pictures, not looking at the words. And then I do another read through where it's, again, another in-depth read. I know all the swerves and I'm looking for details to talk about that. With this series, I've probably read this issue at least 6 times.
Yeah.
And I missed it every single time. Because again, it's just a family background. It's just no, it's not a family background. It's, again, absolutely brilliant. I loved, these are some of the stuff that if you only read your comics once, you do yourself a favor, read it multiple times. Even if you read it once and you thought, it's not my cup of tea, read it a second time. Because there's been so many times when I read a book where I was like, oh, okay, that's okay. I read it a second time. I'm like, oh, I missed that. Oh, that looks cool. And it ends up being something I keep reading on, and I continue on in the series. So this is one of those things I loved about how, again, the usage of the artwork, the story is brilliant, but the art and story working together, this is a great combo. This is a great team. I love how this thing played out.
It's interesting how, he goes, I used to have nightmares of you every single night. Now I'm your nightmare. There's certain times where I think writing is brilliant. It's never in your face that, like, he should be blaming himself.
Yeah.
It's subtle. And he leaves it there. Like, that's really brilliant in this. Like, the heroes never really know, like, totally everything that happened to him. There's, like, it's interesting, like, this story is an example of one where he wins at the end by how much remained unknown, and yet all that remains in the foreground is, and even in the background, is what his intentions were and what he was doing to people behind the scenes. We never, it's kind of like the Joker almost. You don't totally know everything about the Joker. We as the reader have a unique insight into insomnia that our heroes never get. Deadman even doesn't totally, I mean, Deadman sees it, but he's not totally, like, in his face. I mean, like, he's not throwing it out there. Hey, guys, by the way, hey, got something to tell you. This dude should be blaming himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't even say it to insomnia, when the points are getting there, because I don't know that in the moment, in what he's doing and trying to find a way to overcome it, he even had time to process that. Which I love that in the story sense. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was going to echo and say I don't 100% think this is something the heroes didn't even notify and realize.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Me too.
Because, again, they're fighting in the moment. They're dealing with it up front. They're dealing with that. This could be something that later on could get, brought to light, but they don't have the time. They don't have the moment. It's improvise, adapt, overcome, react and react.
Yeah.
It's not, again, they don't have a lot of time for strategery here. This isn't the long game. This is punch up. And I do like the fact that we've got some serious firepower just throwing down at these nightmare incarcerations, incantations or whatever they are, and it's just a constant fight. And as they're going, the heroes have to keep figuring out, okay, what's going on here? It's Detective Chimp and Wesley Dodds who realize Boston's the key. We got to snap him out of it. We got to bring Boston back in the game. And Dodds calling out for him, waking him up because they know we need the dead man for this fight.
Yeah.
The other heroes are like, hey, we got to go to the source of this. We got to go to where the very first, nightmare creation was at. That's the source. We got to go there. And I love just how, again, they're fighting. It's improvised. It's that crazy that crazy Jackie Chan fighting style.
Yeah.
Where you're just moving and hitting. I love how, and again, I love how the artwork captured those moments. They took it down. Sometimes when you had the Boston versus Insomnia, you had to slow it down for that. But then you flip the page and you're back to the high action. Flip the page, back to the thing. It was brilliant usage of that page flip, to get to the moments of the, that slowing it down to, oh my God, slow it down, and just that keep rapid fire, then that calm, rapid fire, calm. I loved how this page was laid out. This is absolutely brilliant.
This is where the tie-ins really worked for this for me, and I'm a fan of this approach. We've talked about it before on the show. In this case, the tie-ins are what heroes in various configurations, and sometimes villains and characters in between, and some unknowns like Angel Breaker and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where let's use this as an opportunity to give you kind of more insight into what impact is what Insomnia is having on the world. So when those issues all end, there's opportunities for them to converge onto this particular, it references this issue or the last issue as, convergence points for those particular titles. What I loved about this main series is, and I especially appreciated it when I read 3, 4, and I want to call it 5, but, the final issue, it was Night's End. Am I going to get that right? This issue in particular, you're not forced with go and read this, go and read that, go and read this. Those stories, if you were able to financially read all of them or some of them, or just time-wise, economics-wise, you couldn't get to reading them. This gave you a great story that, oh wow, these are all people that were impacted. I could see jumping off of this. See, I read all this stuff coming into it, but I could see going, Zatanna and one of the characters from Doom Patrol are together, and what happened there? all right, I kind of want to know.
Yeah.
And I could see jumping off and reading the tie-ins and going at it that way. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to approach that. I think that's cool that, like, this story does that. And if not, you just kind of, like, it makes sense that this is impacting the entire world. And you would get this kind of end result where it's not a clean group of characters. It is a interesting variation of what we know. Like, obviously, Wonder Woman and Superman, because Batman's directly involved because he's there with Damian and Boston Brand was inside him. You get to see, these characters interacting with almost the Trinity would get together with an immediacy to start addressing this. Because of the magic side of this one, Zatanna, getting involved, and now, she's got a direct relationship with a guy she didn't even like at first in Cliff Steele. I really loved that whole piece. This whole event has been a great way to bring in the DC universe. I like that it doesn't end with, doesn't end up with the traditional Justice League being your forefront and center. It was this kind of mishmash team. Because that, I thought, has been the charm of this whole thing all along, has been, these are all characters that I like in configurations that I normally wouldn't expect. This would be what I'd be doing in a board game or in a role-playing game. I would be picking up my team of Justice League, right? And I'd be picking some of my favorite characters, and people would be going, oh, you're nuts putting them together and all that. But in this sequence, if with what they're battling right now, that's my team. I want that team there. I don't want any other configuration. I want this configuration. And Boston Brand. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And I love that. It feels like a game, though, doesn't it? Like, as kids, you play with action figures and stuff like that, and you'd wind up with this kind of mess. Why? Because these are my favorite characters.
Yeah.
I don't care what you put in the books and the movies and TV shows. This is my squad right here. And I love that feel of this. It just really worked for me.
Oh, definitely. And again, it's one of the things I said before. I loved how it's jumping from those actions to those quiet moments. Mm-hmm. And the final, and the air quotes around the word final battle between Insomnia and Deadman. Terrific. I love just that kind of heart-to-heart where they're talking and he's calm. You get this moment where you think, hey, maybe Deadman is getting through to the guy. Maybe he's finally reaching it. And then flip the page. Nope, I won. Rips Deadman in half. That for me was that is outstanding. That was one of the funny things where I went back and I reread that page again immediately. And I was like, oh, that is a brilliant page flip usage. Just how, again, absolutely, I was like, this is outstanding.
But the layer is reading it. This is where rereading it works.
Yeah. When
you know where this goes, you read that completely differently the second time through because you know that, like, Boston knew he was going to do this.
Yeah.
Boston suckered him in. Because this gave Boston the chance to put in play the pieces that he wanted to in order to achieve ultimate victory. It was so cool. I love that aspect that there's that layer of it that, Insomnia right here, he is sure, like mega level in what he's doing. But Boston's one step ahead here. Like, Boston's figured out already at this point that he needs to take the advantage, and he's not going to do that if Insomnia is watching his every move. Let him think he took me out. I love that play.
Yeah. And it's funny because when I first read it through, I knew Boston's not dead. I knew that. But I didn't see the final swerve on what Boston did. I didn't see, that how Boston played him, how he set him up for the final end game. I think that for me with this series has always had those swerves I don't see coming. And I was like, that's absolutely brilliant. I love that, and that's something that I kept throughout all this series, throughout reading all these individual parts, and even a lot of the Nightmare side stories. I kept saying, I didn't see that coming. Oh, that's brilliant. Those are very common words that I was saying while I was reading this series.
Now, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about Sandman. I love the character street level. I love everything about him. That being said, I dug the Sandman and his amazing Dreamstone bit.
Yeah.
That was so cool. Because it's him saying, I always dreamed of being a part of something bigger. Now, we all know, oh my gosh, you couldn't have been a part of anything bigger with the JSA and everything you're doing. But I love that he's using that and standing toe-to-toe with Insomnia and fighting on a level that, it really is a combination of he allowed Boston Brand the opportunity to take the advantage without knowing that that's what he was doing. I loved how that played out. It was faking my death was my whole act. I just loved that. It was like such a perfect moment. And like you, like I knew he wasn't dead when he was ripped apart there. I'm with you on that. I did not see this coming. And that's where the brilliance of it is. It made so much sense. And that's what's beauty. You're like, how did that happen? No, of course that's what would happen. Why didn't I see this is more my reaction to this. And I loved that. I loved that it made sense. It fit the story, but I didn't see it coming the way that it played out. And that battle was just amazing.
Well, and again, absolutely brilliant. I love the fact that he's like, Insomnia, you're no longer a nightmare. You're a ghost just like me. And again, and as I'm reading it the first time, I still didn't realize what the final end game was until, again, page flip.
Yep.
And when you do that page flip, that's when I'm like, he's taking him to the other side. Boston's leaving. Oh, my God. Boston is actually leaving now. This is unbelievable. And I loved how that played out. You know, there's been, and again, it's an absolutely perfect way to end it. You know, taking out Nightmare, taking out Insomnia by moving him on to the other side.
And sacrificing himself, though. But the sacrifice is the key. That's what we don't want to ignore there, because that's how he's able to wrest control of the stone from him.
Yes. Yeah. There has to always be the sacrifice with the Nightmare Stone. So that's how he did. And again, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant on this. 100% did not see that ending at all. I wasn't 100% certain how they were going to win, and I do air quotes around the word win, but I knew that, you knew the bad guys were going to, Insomnia eventually would go away.
Right.
And I love this. And then even you flip the page one more time, and you see he's back with his family. And for a second there, I thought, oh, that is sweet. Again, until you flip the page. You're like, we missed you, Daddy. Like, munch, 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 munch. I'm like, oh, God. He's in hell. Oh, my God. This is his suffering. Oh, that is brilliant. Oh, I love that. Again, another ending did not see coming.
Wesley Dodds, the summation, everything that was happening at the Hall of Justice, even this idea that the Hall of Justice is not being visited anymore because people are scared, was really interesting. Because, one of them goes to Superman at one point in time, oh, it's kind of smart to kind of keep the place closed. That's not what's happening here. Nobody's knocking at the door is what's happening here.
Yeah.
But I really liked the closure with Wesley Dodds. The way that they went and honored him. And it was that same crew that hung with him before that was over there honoring him. I thought that was just a great piece.
Yeah.
Helping to make sure that he went back to peace.
Well, and even Zatanna's spell.
Yep.
To put him back there.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Like, oh, cool. Again, I really dig that. And like you, man, I want Wesley Dodds back. Whether it's zombie Dodds, whether it's Reels Dodds, or something in between, or I don't care, but I want him back. And he's a character that before all this played out, I really didn't know that much about. But I was so endeared to him that in this story, let's bring back Sandman. Let's bring back, and again, we're getting that limited series coming out, so that's a plus. But again, yes, this was a brilliant ending for him. And even you think back, it goes into then with Bruce's body just giving out because of all the stuff that Boston Brad did in him, where he completely lost his consciousness, and it finally gave out. That Dodds goes down, rest in peace. Bruce goes down, and he's in the med unit, getting taken care of by Terrific. But then even going into that final page that you talked about with Clark and Diana talking about, oh, it's good we shut down. We didn't shut down. People aren't coming. And again, we go back to that little girl where she's like, hey, taking down her superhero stuff. And you can see the dad standing there in the corner. His arm is in a sling now. His arm wasn't in a sling before. So when the terror versions of the heroes became living, they attacked the family.
Yeah.
The dad got attacked. Who knows where the mom is, because mom's not there anymore. So I don't know what happened to the mom. But dad definitely has got a broken wing. So further again, it's showing more about shit.
I did not see the ending with Amanda Waller coming. And this is the part that I really loved. We got this epilogue, and it ties back into Lazarus Island. It's a larger tapestry that's being unfolded here. And, this is going back to stuff that, You and I were very used to throughout our, I mean, we've been doing this for almost, 17 and a half years now. These larger stories where, one story builds into the other, we're taking this universe on a journey. I love this layered stuff where now what happened on Lazarus Island leads to this piece where they got the helmet of hate. We've got the Nightmare Stone now. I don't know. I have no idea who this person is. It's going to be somebody I'm going to be really disappointed in, though. Because whoever she's giving that helmet and Nightmare Stone to, I have a feeling it's a hero, right?
I think so. And I don't know who it is. Like you, I don't have a guess yet. But I think it's a hero.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I don't know what's going to happen on this. And like you, anytime you bring in the Wall, it's always awesome. But now you can see Dr. Hate is going after the Titans because they're the new Justice League.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. I'm looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to it.
But the Beast, well, basically she's saying from our phase 2, the Justice League are feared by the world, which means your target's the Titans, which they haven't gotten there yet, So it's an interesting sort of piece. Dr. Hate, Beast World is coming in 2023, November 2023. Dude, the amount of stuff that is just exciting me. This is where event-itis is not getting to me because this is just stories. Bring me more stories. It's event-itis hits me when it's just event after event after event and there's no reason. We're just doing events for the sake of doing events. And there's a difference between the two, right? I think, sometimes you're what is this, what did this event even do other than make me buy 87 billion books? I don't remember the last time I got an event like that, though, from either company. And when I say either company, it's not fair to just label the big two. There's other companies out there like, Valiant and stuff like that have done events, and they've been story-driven events. I think that's where the area where, at least for me, this is a personal thing. Somebody listening might be like, Sean, you're nuts. Sometimes I would just want to read my monthly title. Cool. But in my end, the only time I've ever felt event fatigue is when I felt like I was reading an event and I'm like, what was the point of this? That has been so rare in my life. And I can't give a specific example. But there's been obviously during sometimes some annual crossover or something like that was just done for the sake of getting people to jump and buy those issues. But I'm going back a long time ago. In our tenure doing the show, you're probably a better litmus test for this. Has there been an event, and Jim, there's no right or wrong answer to this one. I'm not setting you up for anything. I'm genuinely asking because I think you can probably be more objective of this than I can because I've read a lot more in my lifetime. Have you ever felt like event-itis? I mean, have you felt like another event? If you have, then there's some validity. Let's talk about it. If you haven't, I guess the question would be why?
Well, here's the interesting thing with that. Before an event hit, sometimes I would have that feeling.
Okay.
But when I started, for this series right here, when this first was announced, I was not remotely excited for it. We talked about that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started reading it going, oh, this is cool. Because again, I wasn't a horror guy. I'm not a horror comic guy. So why would I want to be excited about it? Now, I was curious, but it wasn't anything I was like, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest. No. And then when I started diving into it, the stories really pulled me in. Mm-hmm. You think back to also that, was it the Contingency? That was that one summer event where it was a couple weeks and life under the bubble and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff where I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting, But out of that story, we got Superman back, the Superman back. We got Jonathan Kent out of that story, and it was one of those things where as it was playing out, as it was initially coming out, I'm like, okay, this is interesting, not anything like, oh my God. And then they shifted and this is an oh my God. This is kind of cool. This is bringing, making some updates to the DCU. Nice. I like that. So I think that for me is more of the event-itis feeling is before it hits. And then when I start getting into it, that's when I'm like, okay. And then the post factor, if there's actual ramifications on this, we have solid ramifications on Amanda Waller versus the Heroes, which we saw in the last event was coming out. Now we're seeing this. Now we're seeing Dr. Hate, further examples of it. Now we're seeing the Titans are going to be targeted next. So we know the next Waller versus the Heroes storyline is going to happen there. In the Catwoman series, we're seeing the understanding of this whole Batman, Catwoman, Gotham War thing because of her nightmares that she faced in Night Terror's story is going to start having some bleed through into the real world. With the whole thing that happened with Rose Wilson, that whatever that was that crossed over, that's still around. Somewhere that's going to play out. I don't know where, but somewhere that's going to play out. There's been a couple other stuff where it's going to play out in the future. It's going to, we're going to see some ramifications from this. So again, I personally can't say I have eventitis, but I can understand it. And for me, it's before the event. Once we get into this stuff, give me a cool story. I'm happy. I just want to enjoy it.
Well, one thing first, I want to be very clear. This isn't to throw you under the bus. It's more just for clarification purposes. When you said contingency, did you mean convergence?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and that wasn't meant to be other thing. Just clarification for our listening audience. So convergence was the event that brought back Superman and Lois. It's actually introduced John Kent really as a character. So for people out there, it's a great event for that. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we were being clear off of that. I agree with you on the before piece, and actually you're nailing something. I think this idea when you're like have something looming and you're like, especially if you're enjoying your monthly issues, because let's be honest, when these events happen, a lot of times they will put to the side the current continuity, and then sometimes cause a status quo change that a story direction that you were enjoying is no longer present, which is sometimes good and sometimes leaves things dangling. I really liked how this one, and I kind of echo your concerns. I've been liking the direction right now. So when this thing was going to hit, you're like, okay, what does this mean for the rest of my books? I liked how this one, if there was a title like Green Lantern that was currently going, it acknowledged that. Green Arrow, it acknowledged that. It put it in this issue happened before this. That led to this particular event that they're referencing. You can follow this story here and jump right back into that book right after. I like that. That's really well done when they do that. I thought editorial-wise and writing talent-wise, they did a great job of taking these tie-in issues and plopping them into this story and letting them weave in and out. It helps in the case of like a Poison Ivy, for example, where you've got the creative team on Poison Ivy doing this, right? That just worked really, which Poison Ivy, if you're not reading that book, it's one of my favorite books right now. It is a great title. Do yourself a favor and start reading that book. I'm so stoked that it's an ongoing because I'm really enjoying the monthly reads. I hope it's getting increasing in a readership because it's such a great book. If you're missing that for some reason, you're missing a really gem of a book. Can we talk just about a few tie-ins? We're not going to have time to really talk about all of them, but I think for me, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about a surprising book for me I'm enjoying is Night Terror's Superman. When I say surprising, it's like usually I'm the guy that goes to the Batman stuff. Those have been brilliant, but Night Terror's Superman, we talked about issue 1. Issue number 2 continues the story of Kara Zor-El and, kind of expands more her relationship with her family and what's going on. There's a whole, nightmare doomsday sequence that she's going through. She keeps, as the dream's going on, keeps getting haunted over and over again, overwhelmed by sheer numbers of continuity variations of Supergirl that are chasing her. Her only way to escape it is to try and blast through into somebody else's dream. Who does she go to? Of course, her cousin. Yep. And that's who I'd go to, too, in their relationship, I mean. So now the two of them are fighting the nightmare versions of her in his dream. This is also the book where we've got this expanded storytelling of what's going on with Aquaman's family. These people are still awake, and the reasoning why. Because of the fact that they deal with underwater pressure, they, are able to, tune certain things. They have to tune certain things out. Because of the way that they operate and function, their whole physical makeup enabled them to overcome this because of they're just unique differences. I love that because of the way that they naturally live. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different world. It's a different set of rules, a different way of interacting with the space around you. I love that they put that in as an element in this story. I'm like, wow. And it's really only heavily emphasized here. They reference them, the Night's End issue. And I love the way that they did that. Like, they gave the appropriate amount of time to it. And they don't make you have to read this. But I gotta say, if you didn't read Superman 1 and 2, you should, because it's cool. Like, the Aquaman stuff in this, seems like a weird place to point you to Aquaman. But I'm pointing you to Aquaman and the Superman stuff, because it was great.
I think that's, again, something that they did well with these interconnections and the interweaving and how they did that, all that stuff. With, we have the Action Comics had more of the other super families involvement. Detective had the other Bat families where Batman was the main title. They did a great job with these overlaps and the interconnections of the people. And like one of the books I loved was the Green Lantern one. That was absolutely brilliant. Because the thing that cracked me up about that was not only did the hero beat the bad guy in the dream world, he kicked his butt. And it was just that absolute outstanding sequence because, again, it's the Green Lantern. It's willpower. You're getting into a fight in his mind. Good luck. And I love just how he's sitting there when he realized, oh, yeah, wait a minute, get over here. And Insomnia, I'm pretty sure that was the only hero that got Insomnia to run out of the nightmare, out of the guy's brain, and that's how he woke up. Because Insomnia ran from Green Lantern because of the willpower. I love that sequence. I loved how that played out.
Another piece from Superman that I wanted to reference to was, I thought it was cool that we got to see, it wasn't just Kara and Clark that wound up together. It really, these like strong emotional connections, strong willpower, things like that. Lois Lane wound up in Superman's dream, or he wound up in hers. However you want to take a look at it. It was all of them, three of them winding up together, fighting in that dream space and against the Super Reaper. I thought that was it was like a really cool, like convergence of this. Such a cool story in this end. I was glad to see Aquaman getting some form of spotlight, and that's why I guess I referenced that one in particular as something that really stood out to me. You know what else was really good? Night Terror's Robin. It's a great story if you're a fan of seeing these legacy Robins, have been around for so long, like Jason Todd and Tim Drake, interact, and their relationships grow and evolve, and see how, for as different as they are, for as much as over the years they've combated each other and tried to struggle to fit in together. They really are brothers in a very true sense. It really is the story of two brothers and dealing with differences that ancient brothers would have. I related to it in the sense that my brother, I adore my brother, but in reality, my brother and I are two very different. And yet, as we've gotten older, we've grown to respect those differences in a way that we didn't. We had years where I think we just didn't get each other, which happens in families. But I loved that this story shows a continued evolution of that relationship between the Red Hood and Tim Drake. Yeah. And they're both very personal stories with both. This is continued growth of Tim. And I love that his relationship with Stephanie is not gone because of the fact that we've learned that Tim is gay or bi or however he's labeling himself these days, but he's got this new relationship, yes, with his boyfriend now, but Stephanie is still somebody who he had a strong relationship. This is still a best friend of his. That to me feels very human and organic. You know what I mean? Where it's like, yes, he's discovered things about himself that he just didn't know before, and he's still figuring them out like any human being would do at that point in time. But to me, if you dropped Stephanie right now from his life completely, that's like, whoa. You're like completely changing the identity of the character. They didn't do that. This is a three-dimensional character. This is somebody who they're like, no, that relationship's important to him. That is somebody who he's struggling to protect and care for, just like he would his boyfriend. I liked that. I was like, ooh, that was like some great story details in here that I thought made him feel like more of a real person going through the changes that he's going through. And I really appreciate, this is my Tim Drake. This is exactly who he is. Yes. And that part was, I think, a really important piece when you're making this kind of risky change with a character. And it's a risky change because you're changing and evolving the character in a way that is, anytime you do that with a long-standing character, you take some risks. I gotta say, it's working for me with what they're doing with him. It's when you tell stories like this, and I'm like, in this one, Jason Todd needs him as much as he needs Jason Todd, and it's because of the skill sets, it's because of who they are, it's because they understand each other and what each brings to the table. They are reinforcing with each other their strong qualities. Tim is reinforcing with Jason, hey, hang on a second here. There's good things with you. And they're getting it because they've got to encourage the other because they see the downward spiral the other's going in. Because the nightmares are working on them. Because they're having this shared experience, they're able to reinforce it with each other. I love this kind of stuff. It's stuff that happened in like some of the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies, where like people are kind of like, overtaking Freddy because of the fact that they're helping each other. This stuff like really worked for me. And I'm like, wow, it's awesome that you see. And I walked out of this wanting to see, you could give me a book right now with the Red Hood and Tim Drake, and I would read it in an instant. Like, I want a buddy cop movie with these two.
Yes.
It's really, really great. I really like this relation. I've always liked this relationship dynamic between them. This has evolved it, which is really important with that. You and I are both fans of progression. This feels like progression.
Yeah, and again, that is a series. Those two are characters that they could easily take from this and move on with it.
Yes.
And this, again, they had a solid groundwork beforehand. Whenever Tim and Jason have worked together in different books, it's always been a cool combo. But again, showing them working together, showing them helping each other, showing them be each other's strengths when they needed it. They are part of the Bat family. That right there, those two issues, 100% was all Tim, 100% all Jason. It was, again, those are two characters that we don't get enough spotlight on, and I wish. Again, even if the two of them together in a buddy cop book, I'd love that. Or either one running a show or whatever they want to do. I don't care, but I wish we could get more of them. It's the thing with these. Again, some of these tie-ins. Angel Breaker was a tie-in that completely didn't see coming, and I loved it at the end. Loved the ending of it. Loved just like how she played it out and how again, I was like, dang, that's cool. I want more of this. I want more of them.
Flash was a great one because his nightmare would be not being able to save somebody he loved. Because that's the Flash, half the trick of the Flash is he always finds a way, right? You can sometimes zoom through time. You can do, get there right beforehand. Get that split seconds, really important for the Flash, right? No matter how many times he kept going through time, he couldn't save Wally. Wally gets stabbed by this spear that kills him. And it diseases him and he slowly dies to the point Barry's obsession with, I've got to find a way. He's losing his humanity. He's becoming one with the Speed Force. He's becoming this beast, not realizing that he's causing part of what he's trying to stop. He becomes this time-traveling beast. And it was ultimately Wally who saved him. And I liked that twist, right? It was not Barry was not able to fix himself in this. Wally had to go in there and grab Barry and rip him out. I really liked that piece. That it was a nightmare, and Barry was like stuck in it. He was stuck in a loop, and that was a Flash family moment. I don't need every one of my heroic stories to be one where the main hero gets out of it on their own. Sometimes it's the people that you've trained, the people that you've partnered with. Wally coming in as a Flash and saying, I got to rip my buddy out of this so that way we can, have him. Barry, I need you here because here's what's going on outside of the dreams. And I don't care what you just went through in there. This is worse. It was way cool how that story it was different. It was different than the other ones. And that was, I think, the success of the tie-ins. They could have very easily been these kind of generic, person A goes into this dream. In their dream, this is how they overcome that dream, and then they wake up. And they have their superhero victory of waking up from their dream on their own. It wasn't clean in everyone. And it was very varied in different ones. The Flash, he didn't get himself out of there. Even the you referenced Green Lantern. Green Lantern is one of those books where those two stories, what was going on with Sinestro and what was going on with Hal, had very different endings from each other.
Yes.
And I loved the different endings and what they did for forward movement for the characters.
Well, yeah, because you see, like, at the end of that one, Sinestro is back.
Right.
You know, it's how I'm reading it.
Yeah.
We're going to get Sinestro back, which is awesome, because I love Sinestro as a character. You know, and like with the Catwoman story, I loved how the fact that in her nightmare, she's seeing what happens where her doing what she can do can destroy all the people around her.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so in the real world, in the waking world, she's going to take some steps, which is creating this whole miniseries of the Gotham War, Batman versus Catwoman. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But again, that's an aftermath of the night terrors affecting the regular world. And we know we're going to get limited series on the Golden Age JSA. So I don't know if the Wesley Dodds one may be a play off of this or maybe just something else. I don't know. So they're doing a lot of stuff. And then we even talked about with Dead Man, how that was doing his fireside chat was after he sacrificed himself, after he went on. So what is going on with Dead Man? Are we going to see more of the Dead Man from this? So this series did a brilliant job with, laying out the groundwork, laying down for not only telling us a cool story, but saying, okay, we've got some more future stories coming out of this. Some they gave us directly, Dr. Hate, but there's some of these other unknown factors that may play out from Night Terrors. I'm looking forward to, the next couple months to see how any of this played out.
They're building an engaging continuity. And that's really, really important. This is what I love from a shared universe, is when you're able to do stuff like this where, do we have to read all of it? No. But boy, there's a lot to choose from. And a lot, there's something for everybody spinning out of this. That's something that's really, really critical. This was a success. It's funny. I'm so glad I do rereads, because and it wasn't like an overly negative piece. I will say, after my first reading of the ending of this, I was like, I really liked that, but boy, it felt a little rushed. and I really do think it was the jumping between issue 3 and tie-ins, 4 and then tie-ins, and then the conclusion. In reading them together, I'm like, oh no, this is a tight story. I really like this, and where it's going. And this is a success. Boy, they gave us a summer. They really, really did. We're recording this on September 3rd, and I'm like, wow, July and August were really fun. I mean, this was a fun event. So you're going to do stuff like this? Give me more.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
I would like to remind everyone that our show email address is ragingbullets@gmail.com. Certainly email us if you'd like to. We also have a show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the podcast. RagingBullets.com is our show website, and it feeds into Twitter. It feeds into our Facebook fan page. I'm trying to work out getting it to feed into Threads, too. I set up a Threads account for us. I'll put more details on that when I get a chance to work on that over the next few weeks. But I want to go off of that platform as well. We're really basically trying to hit you with news in the easiest way that we can to let you know about show updates. We are part of an amazing Facebook group community, and I just want to thank the wonderful people for posting there. I go there to check out DC news and what's going on, but also what's going on across pop culture. And we have friends there who post links to their blogs and podcasts and things that they're doing that are relevant to this show. I want to remind everyone that you can catch me regularly on Is It Jaws, where I host with Paul Spataro over there. And it's a movie review podcast, and we use the Jaws theming, Jaws 1, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, Jaws 4, as the rating scale for films. So if you're into films, go check us out over there. The About Us section of the show website is where you can connect with Jim and myself on gaming platforms and social media. We love connecting with all of you. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Remember, DCBS is not just a great place to get some great deals on comics. They have statues. They have the larger busts. They have the collectibles, the various toys and whatnot, and apparel. So please check out DCBS for some great deals. Thank you, DCBS.
over at InStockTrades.com. Once again, check out the Absolute Superman for All Seasons hardcover. This is a $100 book that's 50% off, only $50. Phantom Stranger Omnibus hardcover. Terrific book. It's going to be $150 regularly, 50% off, only $75 for omnibuses. That's insane. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting our show. Jim, our next episode, we're going to be back and we're going to be talking the new Batman and Catwoman event. We're also going to be talking about Blue Beetle. We will see you next week.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think we did it right
Jim,
now. I don't know.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.